Today, Maine families enjoy the freedom to homeschool and raise their children as God intended. But it hasn't always been this way. Many homeschool pioneers have sacrificed much and paved the way so that generations to come might have the freedom to homeschool their children. We must not take for granted the freedoms and blessings that we now enjoy. So let's take a look at the history of homeschooling in the state of Maine. Homeschooling has been around since the beginning of time. During the early part of American history, homeschooling was the leading form of education. The 1970s brought renewed interest in homeschooling throughout the nation for many reasons. Some parents were beginning to feel that traditional schools could no longer meet the academic, social, moral, and spiritual needs of their children. It was a rare state where a law or court ruling explicitly permitted homeschooling. Most people considered homeschooling to be illegal. Those who chose to homeschool either did so by remaining underground or by asking permission from their local school board. Either approach involved risks. In the late 1970s, several Maine families in the Bath area wanted to homeschool their children, so they approached their local school board. The school board was reluctant to make a decision on whether or not to allow the families to homeschool. Ultimately, the family suggested to the state that guidelines be developed because of the trouble they were having. In 1981, the state established a set of fairly loose guidelines that required local school districts to adopt their own rules and policies for granting approval to families interested in homeschooling. School boards could basically develop whatever guidelines they wanted. Inconsistencies from one district to the next abounded, and many families suffered. Approval was either granted or denied at school board meetings, which were open to the public and to the press. Homeschooling families were called upon to defend themselves, and details appeared in local papers the next day. Many times, approval was denied, and this humiliating process continued until 1989. In the 1970s and early 80s, small groups began getting together regularly so homeschool veterans could share information, resources, and support with families new to homeschooling. Support groups began springing up across the state as families saw the importance of sticking together under unfavorable and sometimes hostile homeschooling conditions. In July 1983, the first Maine Homeschool Conference took place in the Sebago Lakes area, with John Holt as the featured national speaker. In 1984, 4 public school superintendents insisted that the Department of Education write a uniform set of homeschool rules via the Administrative Procedure Act for the state. The process took place behind the scenes and without homeschoolers' input, but word got out about the proposition, and more than 300 homeschoolers attended the public hearing to oppose the rules. Consequently, the department appointed 4 homeschool advocates to help amend the document, and the result was the Chapter 130 homeschooling rules. Although less than ideal, homeschoolers worked to comply with the rules the best they could. In 1988, Maine Governor John McKernan recognized that homeschooling was here to stay when he granted the very first Home Education Week proclamation in the United States to Maine's homeschooling families. But Maine's fight for educational liberty was far from over. Through the 1990s, homeschool freedoms continued to be challenged and threatened in many ways, both at state and national levels. The 1994 battle of H.R. 6 in the U.S. Congress essentially threatened to outlaw parent-led homeschooling across the nation. Homeschoolers joined forces in a nationwide effort to protect the freedom to homeschool, and February 24, 1994, brought amazing victory as the most dangerous amendment to this bill was defeated. In the early 1990s, it became clear that Maine families needed statewide support from an organization founded on Christian principles with a heart to serve all homeschoolers. So in 1991, Ed and Kathy Green founded Homeschoolers of Maine, HOME. Since then, the organization has grown dramatically, bringing information and services to thousands of homeschool families throughout the state, regardless of their beliefs or religious affiliation. They offer prayer support, an abundance of print and online resources, including social media, weekly e-newsletters, expert guidance, and trustworthy information so that homeschool families can thrive and prosper. They maintain an active presence on multiple social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and MeWe, so you can follow and connect with them anytime, any place. Home also sponsors an annual statewide homeschooling convention and offers family events, training events, and portfolio reviews. Homeschoolers of Maine is dedicated to the vision of preserving parent-led home education, protecting homeschool freedoms, and promoting safe and healthy learning environments. And by the grace of God, they offer a message of encouragement and hope to Maine families. As we have learned, homeschooling in Maine hasn't always been easy, but at every turn, courageous advocates have stood and fought tirelessly. Because of God's blessing and their perseverance, homeschooling continues to grow and flourish in the state of Maine. In 2003, positive legislation passed in the Maine legislature that completely overhauled former state homeschooling laws and rules. Since then, homeschoolers have enjoyed relative peace. We praise God for the many victories won and the freedoms we now enjoy. History teaches us that preserving liberty requires prayer, hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance. Freedom is not free. Eternal vigilance truly is the price of liberty. We must continue to remember our past and defend homeschool freedoms for generations to come. Will you join us?